I had the P0011 camshaft position code pop up on the '07 Escalade, wife's truck, about 140,000, something like that on it. Pretty typical problem. Some people say to just change the oil. I do some normal oil and interval service on these things. It's not that. Not incorrect weight of oil also kind of cause problems with it. I'm going to start with checking wiring first, but I went ahead and ordered all the pieces you could possibly need to fix this problem, as long as it's not harness or engine computer related. I'll go over what the pieces are, and then just a quick overview on what we're going to have to take apart. And hopefully I find something that's more obvious, like a rubbed wire or a bad connection, a sensor that obviously looks failed. They're kind of hard to eyeball. There is some diagnostic multimeter test you can do with the position sensor and stuff like that. So I'm going to try to cover most of those things as I'm pulling it apart. So let's look at the pieces that I did order. This will be from the easiest to the worst. Depends on how far we got to go. Beautiful part about the LS based engine is that it's just super easy to work on. You know, everything is pretty straightforward to pull apart. Should be able to get it down, even if it is timing chain, whatever, probably within an hour or two. So I'll show you some pieces and we'll start tearing into it. First up is the easiest one to locate and to replace. This is just the cam position sensor. I did get a Dorman piece. Dorman's a pretty good brand. The next part is the cam phaser magnet. This one is a Delco. It does not come with the gasket you need, and I don't like to reuse them when they're this old. Delco number. And if we get into pulling the cover, we're gonna find the VVT solenoid, which is actually the cam sprocket retainer bolt as well. So that one is a Gates. Now, assuming I don't find anything obvious up to this point, the timing cover is coming off, so I ended up getting a new tensioner, Delco. That one, and then also a chain. And while we're there, if I do have to go that far, a new milling oil pump, standard pressure, standard volume. I don't think that the high volumes or high pressures to band-aid a wore-out engine's a real great idea. I'd rather just know about it. So milling's good stuff. I haven't had no problems with them in the past. But other than just your standard timing cover kit, that should be all the pieces. You are going to need oil change, and I bought 4 gallons of antifreeze because you got to pull the water pump to get to everything, of course. So about $400-ish worth of pieces, fluids, all that stuff. Everything came from Amazon. I'll get to tearing into it and we'll go from there. So far, the camshaft position sensor was an absolute nightmare to get out. I don't know why it was so tight in the bore, but I absolutely mangled it trying to get out, and I'll show you what I ended up doing to finally get it released. They did an update design on the magnet side. Their installation depths are still the same, but this one seems like it sticks half the time, and this surface is quite a bit thinner actually. So definitely an updated part. Pretty hard to tell since I had to just destroy the plastic so bad with this thing. Even though the wires are intact and everything, when I ohm it, it's completely open between all 3 terminals. Definitely could have been the damage that I did to it. My crank bolt is absolutely stuck, and my solenoid moves freely, which is a mechanical piece. So I think I'm going to stop here, install the newer components, and just test it for as easy it is to pull the water pump. I'll show you the tools and everything I used to get this nightmare cam sensor out here shortly. The only way I was able to get the cam sensor out, it made it about halfway and then just stopped. So I ended up taking a pair of vice grips and clamping it down, and had this hose tool that I was able to get in the back side and actually push on the back of the sensor as I wiggled the vice grips, and it just popped out, and it not a lot of fun trying to get that thing out. So pretty easy to test. The actual valve itself, there is a button on it, as you can see on the new one. This one moves in and out very freely. Well, as suspected, there's nothing wrong with this unit. I just couldn't put it back in or not take it out, just in case there was something stuck in it. Since it's already out, I'm just going to replace it since I have the new piece. Again, I'm not super thrilled about the torquing technique. I'm going to go 55 foot-pounds and maybe bump it up to like 75 and call it a day. But yeah, I still believe these are my two components that are wrong. So I'm going to get it buttoned back up and think that we should be off and running. This is a 24 millimeter. Pretty simple tools other than the hiccup with the cam sensor. Been a pretty easy job so far. One thing to notice, this magnet assembly does not move as freely as the new one. So I'm guessing that's probably my issue between this whole situation. I don't know if it just expanded at the end. Maybe that's how they fail. That thing was not a good time. But yeah. The VVT solenoid's in. Ended up going 55, then 75. And by the time I hit 75, it started to try to roll the engine over. So I bumped it up to 85 and held the balancer. I think that's plenty tight. Clean up your surfaces, of course, and then always put a little bit of oil or Vaseline around the cam position sensor to help that O-ring not get cut. But other than that, I'll button those two back up. I am going to take the actual wiring harness up to the office quick and just ohm it out, make sure that there's no breaks in it, but everything looks fine, there's no corrosion. Since it's off, I figured I might as well just hit it real quick with the ohm meter just to double check it. It is kind of nice this is a serviceable part if there is a problem with it that I can't fix, but I don't see any issues there. So hopefully this fixes that Stabilitrak beeping P0011 code. I have a feeling between the magnet and the cam sensor itself, my issue will be fixed. I had about 2 days driving it. Typically that code would come on within the first 15-20 minutes of driving. Right after doing the repair, took it for about an hour and a half drive, and then my wife's been back and forth driving all over the place. Still haven't had the code come on, so I'm going to call that fixed. If you get lucky enough that that cam sensor doesn't come out like a nightmare, it's a very easy job. I would say that most of the time that code is going to be popped up by those two components. The solenoid, for what it's worth, you're already there, you might as well put it in. I torqued it to 85 foot-pounds. I know that's not absolutely correct according to the book, but that's pretty much what your torque is on your lug nuts too, so I'm guessing that'd probably be just fine. So everything looks good. I think we'll call that one fixed. Did an oil change with just some 530 synthetic oil like always. I was close to being time for the change anyways, about 3,000 miles. So everything else looks good. The timing chain, all that stuff was tight. I was able to get in with a pick and actually kind of wiggle it to see how much tension was on it still, and it wasn't slapping around or loose. So I'm not going to go ahead and pull the cover and fight the balancer and all that stuff for it. So that should be a pretty easy guide for you on how to do it. The worst case scenario is that cam sensor is kind of a nightmare and you just get yourself one of those nice hose tools or some kind of prying object to get behind it and it pops out fairly easy. So thanks for watching. If you got any questions, drop them in the comments.